Action. All right, we're going to watch. We are going to watch Kathy Way. And where is it? Okay, here it
Kathy
comes.
Way. Kathy Way is Oregon Future Lab's Census Justice Director.
Or
She
what?
also serves on the board of directors for TriMet, as well as on the North Clackamas School Board. So thank you so much for being here, Kathy.
Thank you for having me.
Where? Okay.
Okay, let's start with the same question, actually, that we started with art. There are so many issues that you could be spending your time on. Why is transportation one of the issues that you is worthy of your time?
That is an excellent question.
And then
Before I
that's a
begin,
question.
oh, okay, getting great. Okay. I also want to acknowledge my fellow board director from TriMet in the room, Lori Bauman, is also here in the back, and so I just want to also thank her and her time for being here this evening. I think transportation is one of those things that I am not a policy person. When I started exploring transportation, I was a student, right? I was 13, 14 at the time, living in East Portland, and I was trying to basically navigate TriMet. And my grandfather was the person who researched all the different bus routes and max routes and sort of showed me the ropes, as you will, of how do we access our transportation system. So that, to me, and my experience being a young person, again, growing up in Outer
How
East
long?
County, having to rely on TriMet for various things like school, work, and then eventually taking community members who oftentimes were former refugees, and so they had a difficult time with language barriers and accessing the system. That was really how I became more and more passionate about transportation.
Great, thank you. So we are gathered for the second part to talk about Fairless TriMet.
Okay, this should be
And
interesting.
that's a topic that can get philosophical, I think, very quickly in a way. So currency, and I was listening to, I don't know if you listened to Hidden Brain, but their most recent one was about basically the anthropology of money. And currency is just one language we use to describe a transactional relationship. So like if I have uh, if you have a dollar and I have a bunch of onions and you want my onions, like you can give me a dollar and I will give you onions. And that is a one-to-one transactional relationship that we kind of, I think, understand. But when it becomes a many-to-many transactional relationship, like Medicare or say public transit, who benefits and what the value of that transactional relationship is changes and becomes less clear. So, uh, the first.
Okay, I've already got a problem with this one because she's framing it as something that you need to be paying for because it has a value. She's framing the discussion in a way that negates the entire concept of point of user fees. Okay, she's saying if she just set up the entire discussion saying that there's a value and somebody has to pay for it. You see what she just did? She said, if I go to the store and buy onions, you give me a dollar. She's trying to say this is like that, and it's not like that. This is not like that. Okay, this is completely different from that, but let's keep going.
Substantive question for this part: when a person boards a bus, who benefits?
Come on, Kathy, this is easy. Okay, let's see what she says.
I would like to think that everybody benefits, whether, yay! So the word public, right, is important.
Not everybody benefits. It's a ridiculous comment. Okay, it's not everybody, but it's a right. If you see what other people are talking about, they're saying that this is a right. People have a right of mobility. Let's keep going. Let's not mess with her yet.
And whether you're a young person, whether you are an individual with disabilities, whether you have a command, right, of English as a first language, I think public transit should be accessible and equitable for everyone. And I have grown up in Portland. I've grown up in this great state of Oregon for most of my life, and I know that our communities care about each other and care about our well-beings, and I feel like some of the conversations that we have around FAIR, unfortunately, a lot of times pits communities, right, against each other and different classes.
What do you mean? What do you mean? The discussions we have pits communities. There's those that I call the KTA crowd that don't want to help anybody. Okay, if you can't help yourself, it's too bad. Those people are the ones that are adamantly against fair free transit. And then there's everybody else. Well, we'll not get into that discussion right now.
Against each other. And so I would like us to provide and think about what an alternative vision can look like.
Right. And it's kind of because I heard, there was a lot of applause when it's like everyone benefits.
Let's be honest about this, okay? Kelsey has made it clear there's going to be no fair free transit. He's made that clear. And all the actions of the TriMet administration is police state enforcement of the fares on the light rail system. Okay, the bus system is a whole nother story. They don't sweat the fares on the buses. But for some reason, they go crazy on the light rail with this intense police action enforcement. You see it in New York. You see it in Seattle. Funny, you see this shit going on in blue states. You don't see it in Boston. I don't see this shit in Boston. Okay, I don't know. I don't see any of these police actions going on in Boston, but it's definitely going on in blue states.
Benefits. Do you feel that that's a shared understanding among most people, and why do you feel that is or is not?
I like to say so. I think in addition to people, I forget to mention the planet also benefits from having less polluting automobiles on our road. And so, if we care about, again, our climate and
obviously that's true, right? You can't argue with that.
And the impeding effects of climate change that are very real right now, we also have
Oregon
to take into
Future Labs
consideration
Census
how
Justice
do we become
Director.
good stewards.
What the hell? Oregon's Future Labs Census Justice Director? What the hell is that?
Of the city, and how do we get folks from point A to point B through transportation, but again, back to this idea of creating this vision, right, of what we want to see here in our region. I think it's very doable, and we've seen other cities now taking action towards what a fairless system can look like.
What cities are you thinking of when you say that?
Kansas City is one example that comes to mind.
And that was very recent.
That was. And we also have Corvallis that obviously, these jurisdictions serve a larger service area than TriMet. And so I know that sometimes it's not a complete, apple to apple comparison, but the fact that those boards and and the leadership of those places are having these conversations, I think we should definitely note that.
I'm going to pause. I really appreciate you talking about our climate and climate action goals. Point of privilege, I'm on the Planning and Sustainability Commission, and one of those pieces is we're looking at re-upping the climate action plan. And we've recognized that the state of Oregon are like 44% of our emissions comes from the transportation sector. That was not in my notes. I just knew that. We should all just know that.
I wonder if that's actually true. I think I've heard something else about that.
I want to start. So you were talking about how other cities have worked on fareless transit, and so TriMet hasn't had fareless transit writ large, but we've kind of, I feel like, flirted with it, right? Like we've had Fairless Square. People remember Fairless Square. We also have Youth Pass, so we're trying to expand free transit for young people, as well as a reduced fare for people over 65, and now people who are living on lower incomes. I'm curious, can you talk a little bit when we start to think about fareless transit and what would, again, success look like? Can you talk a little bit particularly about Youth Pass and low-income fares and how those programs have been going.
Yes.
Look, they're not even getting to the point. The point is TriMet gets 100 million in fares. Now, how do we get that 100 million and eliminate the fares? That's what they should be talking about here. They're not talking about that.
So you mentioned all of these different options for folks with limited means or limited income.
Limited means limited income is a half price fare. Okay, it's still a fare, and you still have to pay for it. I mean, if you're broke, you're broke. Half price fare isn't going to help you if you're broke. There is no free pass in Portland unless you work for OHSU or PSU or some company that gives you a pass. You don't get that as a citizen. You might be able to get it from some of the social service agencies, but there is no free pass from TriMet itself, which I think is disgraceful, but nobody cares what I think.
To access our service. And I think it's great that our agency has taken bold steps in addressing the needs of young people, for example, or the needs of our low-income folks through the low-income fare program that was implemented last year, and since then has served over 27,000.
See how she's hold on, she's pumping out the TriMet propaganda. And you have to understand what the TriMet board actually is. People don't really understand. They are screens for the TriMet general manager. They are the public relations. They always support TriMet, and they always support everything TriMet is doing. And if they don't, they get kicked off the board. And I've seen that happen myself. Lynn Learback.
I think where we are still missing the picture is how do we tie all of those in, right? Instead of a patchwork of funding from different sources or different different buckets, if you will. I think our agency can think about the financial sustainability of where we're headed. If we really come together and think about these are the buckets that we're already funding and that we're already subsidizing.
Yeah, but they're going to ask for $3 billion to build a light rail line. That's really not necessary. It's not going to improve transit. Let's be honest. There's already service going to those areas. It's not going to improve it. As a matter of fact, it's going to curtail a lot of it. So when she's talking about these buckets, you see, let's be honest. They want $3 billion from the citizens so they can build a light rail line. That's not going to really help anybody, okay? Some people that are driving will probably take the light rail, but that's not expanding the service because there's already service.
So how do we pull those things together so that we can potentially talk about a fareless system?
Woo! Now we're getting into it. So we have TriMet's budget. I think is about 25%. About 25% of it is active ridership.
Wrong. It's 15%. Okay.
Operational budget is about 25%.
Yeah, see, that's fraudulent because there's the whole TriMet budget. And then there's the operations budget. You can't subdivide out one piece of TriMet from the other and say, well, the bus system itself is not part of the other system. It's all part of one system, and it's 15. I think it's 6% actually of the entire budget. I have to look it up. It's small potatoes to the total TriMet budget.
Or I'm sorry, the fare collected is about 25% of our operational budget.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So, which is a lot less than folks.
Right, like it's not zero, but it's not as much.
It's not that either.
And I think some people
they're lying about that.
Stated a concern around the idea of fareless TriMet have done so, saying that this is going to denigrate.
Why don't you be honest and say how much fares you're getting every year? You're making $100 million in fares. Just be honest. And, that's less than the debt service. The debt service is the interest paid to banks for TriMet capital projects, which is what TriMet actually is a capital projects agency with a subsection that's called transit providing. See, it's not truthful. It's not honest.
denigrates service. So can I ask, what do you see pathways of pulling up that fare and ensuring that fareless transit is abundant?
Yeah, I mean that is definitely an argument that's out there, right? Is if we collect no fares at all, then services are going to suffer, or there's going to be parts of the Tri-County area where we're going to have to cut down on service.
See, they man, it's false. They've got it all figured out. This is your standard public transportation technocracy excuse. Rather than saying, well, where can we cover the fares? Find in the budget where you can cover the fares. I can tell you right now where. Capital projects. You cut capital projects and you got your fareless transit system. But that never comes up. Nobody talks about this. Just a few insignificant citizens like myself talk about it. These technocracies, these established technocracies, always say the service will be cut. This is how these oligarchies function. They never tell you the actual truth. They always obscure the truth in these false equivalencies.
And that is a legitimate concern. I feel like the compromising of service should not be a compromise, and I say that because our agency also is spending millions of dollars on fare enforcement.
Yeah, right.
A couple million dollars on a campaign that, a public campaign around paying fares that actually didn't quite land well with community members. And
she's referring to you just like the guy in the bar who didn't pay for the drink. That was really stupid.
Social media spotlight on why are we, criminalizing or victimizing folks who can't pay. And
why
I believe we have the funding to figure out this piece and sort of this gap that we need. And we need to bring more people together. I think the fact that, we are getting invited today to have this conversation signals some movement, and hopefully we get to hear from more community members who are interested about pursuing this vision.
Great. And bringing people together makes me think of, ridership, and how is TriMet working on increasing ridership? So that this is
they're not increasing. It's been flat for a decade.
Like when it's a better value proposition where more people are using it, it becomes it's like, well, of course, this is a social benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, over the last year, we have actually seen a 4% increase in ridership. So,
what?
So I will commend our agency for, doing all that they can to promote TriMet.
See how she's just cheerleading? She's cheerleading. Kathy, you're cheerleading. I'm not even going to watch the rest of this because this is fake.
In Washington County. I'm a
4% increase over the course of a year. I don't think so.
I don't know if there's any Clackamas folks here, but so over the last year we have, due to House Bill 2017 funds, I didn't use HB as an acronym, but thank you to the legislature for continuing to fund some needed service enhancements. And then we also rolled out the low-income fare program. So we are headed in the right direction, again, of sort of subsidizing these programs so that we can be more accessible and equitable. But like I mentioned, it's not a complete picture, and we are seeing, I'm holding this red pledge card that was handed to me when I literally walked in the door about, region-wide youth pass, right? Low-income fare. And so I think for me as a board member, this is a reminder that there's a community that wants to talk about this, that wants to explore this. And as leadership, I think we need to listen and act.
Can you talk about, can we talk about some of the community organizing that you have seen?
There hasn't been any.
Yes, definitely. So if you're ever fortunate to show up to the TriMet board meeting at 8:30 in the morning.
It's like a board meeting. I can't watch it.
We have, community members, right? A lot are transit-dependent riders, part of Opal Environmental Justice, and probably 15 to 20
How
other
much is left of
organizations
this?
that show
Okay,
up in full
I'll
effort,
suffer through
and they
this.
testify and they talk about priorities for our climate, priorities for our region around transit, and we're starting to see some more young people. I don't know how they would get out of school, but we're also starting to see some young people show up, really,
Yeah, they show up at the
talking
board
directly to
meeting
the
and they
board of
get nowhere.
directors around these issues that they face. And as someone who is organized in communities, and low-income communities, people of color, I think it's exciting to see that type of citizen, engagement.
Just want to check. I have so many
Check your
questions.
time.
So one thing we have, I always like to think of anything that
Who is
includes
this woman?
social
She's like so
change.
Portland, that
we
makes me want to
often
throw an egg
are
in her
stuck
face.
It's like, why do something different? Like, why fairless TriMet? I like to think of that relationship between social justice and science fiction. So
What?
it's like, why not? And so
What?
I'd like to ask the flip question, because
Social justice and science fiction? What? What?
fairs currently comprise, again, as we were talking about, 25% of the TriMet's operating budget. We're working to make TriMet free for young people, cheaper for people who are older or living on lower incomes, and if people who are employed are already paying through the workplace, how is fairless transit not the obvious next step?
Well, I think, one of the biggest factors into that is the revenue question.
Of course.
Right? And that is something that we have yet to explore. Myself and another board member a couple months ago did make a public statement saying that, we are exploring
They made
what
a
that could
public
look like,
statement
having
of
some
bullshit.
conversations. And I think we need consistent, continuous community engagement and community feedback around this issue. And so if the public has ideas, email us, connect with us. I know that Metro is going to be promoting their T2020 transportation bond measure that's coming.
They want $3 billion to build light rail, but free public transit? No. Homeless, get the people off the street? Nope. That 2020 bill, hopefully the Portland residents will see through that crap and shoot that down.
Up, I'm very excited to hear that we are going to, we are on the right track to potentially fund youth, fully fund the youth pass for our low-income high school students through that bond measure. And so there's some momentum that's building up here. And I think, again, this is the right time and the right opportunity to get engaged, right to the board members, right to, folks who represent you in your area. And let's see how we
I
can
can't
do this.
watch these people.
Is there a timeline for that conversation?
I can't
Has that
even watch
process
this.
been
Just like
kinda
watching a
mapped
board
out, or is
meeting. It's
that
all
still in
bullshit,
process?
man.
I believe it's still in process. We have a finance and audit committee that meets regularly, and they are sort of the smartest group of folks in our agency to really put together our numbers and our budget and present it to the board. And
The board
with this
of
direction
sock
that
puppets.
we're hearing from several of us, I know that this is something that they're taking a look at.
Yeah, very uninspiring.
We have,
Check.
I think, question for one more question.
Oh, God.
What should I ask?
Who are you, lady?
Yeah, I know you're not supposed to have favorites. What is your favorite bus?
Oh my God! What kind of dumbass question?
It's hard to. I would probably say the
stupid-
72. Yes. So
That just goes to show that she doesn't ride the fucking buses.
Why is it your favorite?
I
This is
mean,
the
I
stupidest interview I've
grew
ever
up around
seen.
82nd Avenue. I moved around a lot in Portland, but I think living around 82nd Avenue, we have seen so many changes in terms of the number of families that are coming in, right? More diverse households, and I feel like the 72 has been sort of that like lifeline through the community, and it's also one of the lines that are we have the most riders in our entire region. Is on bus 72. So I think that's something to be said about the need and the urgency for a fearless system.
Great. And last question before I let you go. I want to actually bring in your other role as the Census Justice Director.
Census
this
Justice.
is
What
the
is that?
2020 census.
What is it?
Can you talk a little bit about what the census count this year, what that will mean for transportation in the future, as well as other services?
Yeah, I'm really glad that you mentioned it. So in addition to serving on TriMet and a role on the school board in North Clackamas, I also work for Oregon Futures Lab. Our mission and our focus is really to see our democracy and our leadership reflect the people and the communities. And so with census efforts, I think it's really important to say that this is an opportunity in 2020 for Oregon to receive federal dollars. 2016, we received about $13 billion from the federal government that funds programs like Medicaid, free and reduced lunch for kids, education, transportation projects. And so this is going to be a really big year for all Oregonians to be counted in the census. We know that there is still a disparity in terms of folks of color, if English is not a first language, if you are renting, we see some of those groups not getting fully counted. And so it's really important that everyone can play their part and fill out the census. Census Day is April 1, and so if you're curious of when is it, Oregonians will be getting mailers in the mail beginning in March. And this is also the first time that there's going to be an online response. And so yes, if you want to see, Oregon receive more money from
it's all about the fucking money, right? It's always about the money.
Fund transit today.
Yes. April 2. Yes. Get everyone counted. That's the key. So yes, please make sure that you do your part and tell your neighbors and friends in filling out the census.
Right. Thank you so much, Kathy Way.
Thank you.
Well, that was completely uninspiring. There was nothing there, nothing there but except the company line. There's nothing there, nothing, zero. Yeah, well, we've had a superficial discussion about a fairless system. Oh, but meanwhile, the general manager is wholeheartedly against it, and he said so publicly. And so has the public relations hack Alstead, who's also said it's not going to happen. But, this is public relations, man. So they make it, let's say something about it so people think we're interested. And it's fake. It's fake, They don't have the 100 million, but they're going to ask the citizens for $3 or $4 billion for whole bunch of capital projects, 5 or who knows how many billions they're going to ask for the citizens for capital projects. And all that capital project money goes to planners and construction company. Nothing goes to you, the person. This is how our system works. You get nothing, okay? Nothing. The citizen gets nothing. You pay them. All that money goes to the insiders and the people they're connected to, and you get nothing. And the biggest reason to have a fairless transit is to get those police off of there. This is not a goddamn, the way they're handling it here is they're criminalizing it. It's like Nazism as far as I'm concerned, the way they're doing that. And, you have a complicit person interviewing her there. So we got nothing. There's no point even watching this. It's just nothing.